catch up, and then we'll all be on the same page. Hello, we're live. Hello, and welcome to day 4 of the Black Cat Comics Rock and Milpitas Pre-Comic-Con. This is panel day. We're doing industry panel discussions. I have with me my partner, co-owner, manager, and all-around awesome lady, Francie. Say hello.
Hello.
And I'm your host, Mark Kazi. You know me from the videos and the podcast and the Behind the Counter and all that good stuff. Every year we do this pre-Comic-Con the week before San Diego. We put some events on throughout the week to give you a little taste, a little flavor of what they do at the big show. We did movie night last night. That was sort of our version of Hall H. That was tons of fun. We did preview night, all sorts of fun things. The swap meet is tomorrow. But again, today is panel discussion day. When you go to San Diego, when you go to most of the bigger shows, they have a list of panel discussions, and industry professionals sit and talk about things that they know about, and you go and listen to them talk about things that you're interested in. So today we're going to do a panel on conventions, one and all, big and small. That's our topic for the next hour. A little later today at 4 o'clock, we're going to do a state of the industry panel where we talk about the overall numbers and talk about comics as a business, not as an art form. So we hope you'll tune in for that a little later too. So we'll go ahead and get started.
Let's jump in.
Francie and I have been going to conventions for a long, long time. Our first San Diego Comic-Con was in 1996, and we've been going ever since. This will be our 23rd San Diego Comic-Con next week. We're always excited to get to Comic-Con. But we've been to all kinds of shows in between. We've been to the big shows like New York Comic-Con. We've been to little shows like our local San Jose Super Toy Show, like Powerhouse Con in Pleasanton, out to Sacramento, and everything in between. So we thought it would be fun to share some of our experience, some of our insights, some of our tips and tricks, and all that good stuff for those of you who are getting ready to go to San Diego, or maybe you're getting ready to go to any of the umpteen Comic-Cons that are rolling out over the next few weeks. So as I said, we started back in 1996, and it was a very, very different kind of show, very different industry, very different world back then in 96. Even though comics were really booming, that was the Image heyday and all that sort of thing. Of course, the internet was not quite what it is today, all those things. So you just showed up, you waited in this ungodly line, and you bought your ticket. Preview night was not a thing yet, so the show didn't start till Thursday. It was the vast majority of it was just comics and panels. TV in Hollywood hadn't quite made it yet.
I think I was one of maybe 5 females at the convention.
That is also an unfortunate truth. There were
like 2 cosplayers, maybe.
Yeah, cosplay was not a thing. At the time, I was one of the younger people, which is again no longer a thing. So like I say, it was a very, very different show, but in a lot of ways for people who had a burning passion for comics or sci-fi or horror or whatever it is, whatever sort of gaming or whatever sort of genre, anime, animation, all those things. We were all a big raging fan of something, and we all met in San Diego, and then we were one big giant family, and that family has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, and today is San Diego Comic-Con is the biggest thing in the world, maybe next to New York. They're probably neck and neck. But either way, San Diego is one of the biggest conventions you can get to, has everything going on. And we hope you're all getting out there this week. So we thought we'd start small. We'll tell you a little bit about the local shows, the kind of things that you see and do at the places like Powerhouse Con in Pleasanton is coming up, just in a couple weeks, July 21st. And the San Jose Super Toy Show is quarterly. That's always fun. When's the East Bay Comic-Con coming up?
East Bay Comic-Con is that's not until next year.
The
South City Comic-Con is on September 15th in San Mateo.
And those are all great examples of local shows, of your very personal, kind of smaller shows. They are usually 1 or 2 days. They focus on the buying and selling of stuff. There's all kinds of vendors with all kinds of different things. They generally don't have too much with the panels or too much with the megastars, but they do have some famous folks that you've seen. They might have a panel or two or a signing or two or something like that.
Like Shirley from Laverne and Shirley.
Like Shirley from Laverne and Shirley. Steve Wyatt, who puts on the South Bay
City.
Comic-Con and East Bay
East
Comic-Con.
Bay.
He always has a great guest list. The San Jose Super Toy Show always has a great guest list. They're folks that you know and love. They may not be world famous, but they're folks that a lot of us want to meet and have a good time meeting and greeting.
That you grew up with. You watch the TV show and you get a chance to meet your favorite actor. Like I met Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
I like the smaller shows because they have a wide range of things. Oddly enough, these days you're finding more and more that the smaller shows have the widest range of merchandise. You get the vintage stuff, you get vinyl records, you get a huge range of things.
Toys, secondary
toys, whatever you want to talk about. The San Jose Super Toy Show, all these little shows that we talk about. Are packed with all kinds of different vendors. And so you can go and have a great time looking at stuff, and you can bring anybody you want, and they're going to have a good time looking at stuff. They're going to have fun with something and somebody that they run into.
And I like the local shows because it's like a little mini snapshot of your culture, your subculture group right in your region. So even though there's a lot of them here in the Bay Area, each one is a little bit different. You can see that each one brings something a little bit different. Like one will have more of an emphasis on secondary market toys and records. One will have more of an emphasis on maybe some cosplayers. So they all have their own little flavor. So it's good to go to a bunch of different ones. If you can afford it and you've got the time and the desire, go to as many as you can.
And afford is, I'm glad you brought that up because it is obviously a theme. Money is obviously a theme when you're going to be attending conventions. So we'll try and interject that here and there throughout the show. One other thing I love about the local shows is, of course, they're rather inexpensive. They want you in the door so that you have money to spend at the vendors and you have money to spend doing other things. And that can be fun. Is that, it doesn't take a lot to get in the door. And as I will say of all of these shows, because I always like to make a point to say this, because again, I've been going to shows for many years. Some years you have a few bucks in your pocket. Some years you have no bucks in your pocket. And I've been in that situation in all of these shows. And again, one thing I like about all of these things is you don't have to spend money when you get there. To have a good time at a convention, all you got to do is get in the door. And walking around and looking at stuff, walking around and talking to people, walking around and making friends doesn't cost you a dime.
Well, and even if you can't afford the ticket price, you can always reach out to the people putting on the show like a week or two before and see if they need any volunteers. Maybe you could volunteer helping to collect ticket sales or do door monitor or be a handler for one of their celebrity guests. So there's always ways creatively that you can get into a show for free. And we've got a quick question from Joe. Yes, the San Jose Toy Show that we're talking about is at the fairgrounds, Santa Clara County Fairgrounds off of Tully, I think. Yeah.
If you contact Time Tunnel Toys, they're a toy store in San Diego. Joe's the guy that puts on the show, and he's super awesome.
He's super nice. We love Joe.
And so, as I say, I wanted to mention real quick that all you got to do first off is get yourself in the door. And then if you have a few bucks to spend, well, then the world is your oyster. But the local shows are great because they're, generally speaking, inexpensive to get into. And though, as I say, you don't have to spend a lot of money, they have the same quality of stuff that you find at all the shows. My friend Alan from Heroes brings a great stash of comics to every show he goes to. So like at the BerkeleyCon is a small show. And Alan has a huge stash of beautiful Golden Age books. So even though it's a small show, you can still find some gems. You can still find some great stuff.
And because it's cheaper for vendors to set up at the local shows, you get a huge variety of people showing up. So it's not just like retailers like us or established writers or publishers. You actually get people that have a bunch of stuff in their garage that just show up. It's kind of like a mini flea market. And that's really fun.
The fans.
It's fun to see what people have, collected over the years. Old Disney stuff, old, like I said, records, Viewmasters, all the stuff that you grew up with, you can find typically at the toy show. There's a lot of variety there.
Very, very true. Great stuff. So let's move on now to the next step up, which is the regional shows. Regional shows are a little bigger than your local city show, but not quite on the level of the big city shows. Regional shows are something like our local regional show is the Silicon Valley Comic Con, and that's a whole lot of fun. It's again a little bigger than your more localized shows. You have a larger guest list. You now have like usually a large panel list of all kinds of different things going on like that.
A bit more polished, a bit more professional, and a lot more expensive.
And more expensive. You'll have cosplay and gaming and contests and things like that at the more regional shows. And we call them regional because folks will come from all around. Sacramento is a good show. SacCon is a good example of a regional show. Again, Silicon Valley is a good regional show. People aren't necessarily going to fly from New York to attend the San Jose Super Toy Show. People aren't going to fly from New York necessarily to attend Silicon Valley, but somebody might drive someone might drive from Sacramento. They might drive an hour to go to Silicon Valley. I drive an hour to get out to SacCon. So like I say, people aren't going to fly to these shows, but they're going to drive some way because that's the bigger convention that they have in the area.
And just to help put it in perspective, the local shows, maybe 500 to 1,000 people go, and the regional shows more in like the tens of thousands of people.
Yep, for sure. And again, the regional shows are going to have a wider range of things. I know at Silicon Valley, one of my favorite things to talk about for that show is that NASA shows up.
Isn't that cool?
You don't get NASA at the little local shows. You don't get some of the bigger things, the bigger events, the bigger presentations that at the local shows that you find at your regional shows. So that's a lot of fun. Trying to think of some other local examples. SacCon is a pretty big show. Silicon Valley is a pretty big show. San Francisco is trying to get there, but and when we had WonderCon was a regional show, but since it's moved to Anaheim, it's become a national show, and that's kind of more along our next topic.
I can't think of any other regional shows that are comparable to Silicon Valley here.
But they're always in a larger venue. They're often more than one day. They're usually 2 or 3 days. As you say, the door prize is the door price is a little more expensive. Unlike the local shows, which is more about getting you in the door to buy things. The regional shows are frankly more about paying the rent of the venue that they're in. So it can cost you a few bucks. But like I say, the merchandise is extensive, and they have great guest lists and panels and all that sort of thing. There goes the Science Tech found at SDCC.
It is
very
cool. Yeah,
that's true, Joe.
And that's nice that it's unique to us, right? Because we're Silicon Valley, NASA's based right here. We've got big headquarters, so it's nice to have that flavor at the local show.
And Sacramento, SacCon is a good example of a regional show because it takes all those things of the local show and blows it up a notch. Takes it up times 10. There's lots of comic vendors.
It's like
they have a high quality guest list and all that sort of thing. And that's something that we'll continue to talk about as we get into the national shows. The bigger you get, the show has all of the things of the previous show and then ramped up a notch. That was nice. We did that in synchronized. That was fun. So national shows, what are the national shows? As I just mentioned, WonderCon. WonderCon was our big, cool regional show, and then they stole it from us. And, well, actually, to be honest, San Francisco kicked them out of town. And now they're in Orange County, and it's really, really grown into a national show. It's kind of the next step down from San Diego. We love going to WonderCon because Disneyland's right there, but also because it's a great show. Seattle is a good example of a national show. Emerald City Comic Con.
Yes.
Chicago, Wizard World Chicago, or what is it?
No, it's not Wizard World.
What is that?
Reed Pop. It's C2E2.
C2E2, thank you. Yes, any of the Reed Pop shows are going to be national shows. We're big fans of Emerald City Comic Con. I have a great time at Emerald City. At WonderCon. I haven't done Chicago yet myself, but our man Anthony has been there. He sings its praises. And then again, the national show has everything that the regional show has, everything that the local show has, plus all of these times 10. A national show is going to run 3 to 5 days. A national show is going to have television and movie previews of stuff that's coming out next year. The studios are going to be there. The publishers are going to be there. Big time artists are going to be there. Big time comic creators are going to be there. Big time cosplay, the kind of cosplay where they have entourage and photographers and such. The big contest panels that have every sort of topic under the sun, and then where they show you stuff that's coming out, and they show you vintage stuff from back in the day, and things that you just don't see in your local comic shops or at the regional shows or at the local shows.
And it usually takes you more than a day just to walk the floor. If you want to look at every booth and see what everybody has and brought to the convention, it's going to take you probably 2 days to do some of these shows.
Yes.
Just the floor alone.
The national shows are a great example of what we've been talking about, how they have a huge range of vendors and a huge range of panel discussions, a huge range of everything. So again, you can show up and have days and days of fun with whatever you're into, and you can bring anybody you want, and they're going to have fun, and they're going to find things that they're interested in and find things that they want to do. We went to Seattle for the first time 5 years
Sure.
ago.
Sounds right.
More than 3 years ago. We've been 2 or 3 times now, and we've added it to our standard repertoire because it's a really, really great show. You can buy tons of comics, but you can do all of those other things that you like to do too.
Yeah.
And again, they're so big that you need those extra days to go and do these things. The national shows, you need more than 1 or 2 days to do your thing.
Yes, you do.
And of course, as we said, the thing that makes WonderCon excellent is that Disneyland's there. So if you're fortunate enough, you can go to the park and then go to the show and then go back to the park and go to the show. That's what I do every year, and it's tons of fun.
It's kind of ridiculous how awesome it is.
It does really bring out the 10-year-old in you.
So because I'm a data gal, I've got some stats.
Okay.
So WonderCon on average has about 66,000 attendees, and C2E2 in Chicago has about 90,000.
Wow, 90,000.
I think Silicon Valley, I didn't get a chance to look those numbers up, but I think they're on par with like WonderCon, maybe like 45,000, maybe.
That seems about
I
right.
don't know. Someone can correct me online, I'm sure.
No, that's really interesting. That's a lot of
A lot of
people.
people.
And I'll interject here something that I always like to mention. It's a great crowd. When you go to these conventions, you make friends, you meet people. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. I make new friends at San Diego every year. You don't really go to events where there's 90,000 people and they're all super cool and they're all into what you're into. Even when you go to rock concerts and when you go to sporting events, when you go to whatever, it's not the same kind of easygoing, fun crowd that these things are. So whether it's like you're saying, the national shows with 90,000 people, San Diego with however many hundreds of thousands.
133,000.
There you go.
And New York Comic Con is actually almost twice as big, so I need to correct you on that. New York Comic Con has 250,000 people
Wow, that's
compared
crazy.
to San Diego, which is only about 135. So that's the biggest show in the United States is, bar none, New York Comic Con.
Well, there you go. And that's a fun show.
We
Well-
should talk about how the big shows are different for people, like how Chicago is different from Seattle. So depending on what your interests are, we can tell you a little bit about what we think, like the themes or the big components are for each of these shows. What do you think?
Hold that thought for half a second. We'll round out our list, our description of shows by talking about, even though we're already halfway there, we'll talk about global shows because there's just a couple, and then we'll get into these things.
Okay.
The last category, and I only have 2 on the list, is global shows, San Diego and New York. So again, a national show. Someone will fly from just about anywhere to go to Emerald City Comic Con.
Yeah.
Because it's an awesome show. Someone will, but you may not go from, say,
Florida.
Spain.
There are some people though.
Sure, as always, but just to say that you'll fly from around the country to go to Seattle, to go to Chicago, to go to WonderCon, but you may not fly around the world to do that. But you would fly around and people do, yes, but it's not.
Well, they come for like Stranger Things. They had the Stranger Things cast last year. So
Right.
there's a lot of international crowd because that was the only panel or the only venue where you could see the whole crew in one sitting.
That's true. And Seattle's getting even bigger, so it
Yeah.
might make the global list very soon. But like I say, the last on the list is the global shows. San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con. People come from all over the world
Yeah.
to go to San Diego Comic-Con. Everybody in the world is trying to get into San Diego Comic-Con, and most of them can't.
And
Um,
it feels like the whole world is there.
It does, especially when you said 250,000.
It's a lot of people.
San Diego feels like it has that many people.
Yeah.
But the global shows, again, they have it all. They have things that you can't see at any other kind of convention. They have things that you won't see in any comic shop, in any kind of museum or whatever.
They have a lot of things you can't unsee also.
They have things you can't unsee. like say the crowds, but the studios come, all the publishers come, the biggest names in comics, the biggest names in TV and movies go to those shows. Last year, or was the last year, 2 years ago at New York Comic Con, we saw the intro to the final season of Daredevil for Netflix, and that was one of the best panels I've seen in 20 years of going to panels. We saw the Into the Spider-Verse. We saw the first half of Into the Spider-Verse before anybody had seen any of that, and that was really awesome.
And my favorite, Good Omens.
Yes.
With the full cast, Neil Gaiman. I was all beside myself.
And Neil Gaiman,
dude,
to single him out,
I will travel around the world.
Is the kind of person, generally speaking, and I'm not picking on Neil or picking on anybody. I'm using him as an example of super famous people. You're not going to see someone like Neil Gaiman at your local show.
No.
You're not going to see Neil Gaiman at your regional show.
No.
You might see him at the national shows like Seattle, but the place you see people like that are at San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con. We saw big shots. Jeff Loeb. In our little world, Jeff Loeb is one of the biggest people there is. And he's at San Diego, he's at New York, but he doesn't travel everywhere. Probably Chicago. But you got to go to the global shows to do the big stuff. You got to go to the global shows to do the really big things that people love to do at con. And again, if you can drag along somebody who's never done this or thinks they're not into stuff, they will learn a whole new world of amazing as when they get to San Diego. The whole city transforms. San Diego, the entire city of San Diego becomes Comic-Con. New York doesn't really work like that because New York's bigger than anything. And so New York Comic-Con is just another drop in the bucket in New York. But to us, it's definitely a global show. So what you want to say about the differences in shows?
Yeah. So the flavors of each of these shows. So before you spend your money, think about what your goals are for the shows. Is it about, buying old books, looking for old toys, getting exclusive figures, pops, variants, doing the cosplay thing, doing the gaming? Because they each kind of specialize in one or two of the major areas. So if, let's say, Silver Age comic buying is your thing, then Emerald City Comic Con is the show you need to go to. So we could probably spend the whole 4 days, however long it is, just rifling through Silver Age books, and they have the best deals, bar none. Better than San Diego, better than New York. So if you're a Silver Age fan, get your ticket to Emerald City pronto.
That's very true. And honestly, as we said in the beginning, these things, the big shows have everything that the little shows previously had. In a lot of ways, to that point, you said about the local shows, that all the local shows have their own flavor.
Yeah.
And the Super Toy Show is kind of different from Pleasanton and this and that. And that extends all the way through. Except for maybe, even with San Diego, because as you say, Seattle is the place to get comics. San Diego, frankly, might not be the place to get your comics anymore. It's the place to do TV and movies and video games and all your pop culture stuff. I buy a lot of comics. I come back with a great stash from San Diego, but there's not the deals. There's not the variety. There's not the extent.
There's fewer and fewer comic vendors at San Diego every year.
But New York, I thought, was very comic heavy. New York, even though it's still a global show, has less of the Hollywood and more of the things that we're all here for.
It felt like a stronger publisher presence in New York than in San Diego, maybe because a lot of them are still based in New York, but though DC's in LA now.
They are. And DC still has a pretty strong presence in San Diego.
And in New York, too.
But like I say, you got to find the show that's right for you. You got to plan ahead. All of these things require planning, and you want to know what you're there for. For the big shows, you got to have your panel schedule ready. You got to have your exclusives list ready and all your timing and all that. But even with the little shows, I need to take my comic list to the little show because there's so many comics there and so many toys. I got to stay on budget. I got to stay focused. So I have my lists and I'm prepared.
Real quick, because we get people coming into the store all the time asking this. A lot of folks don't realize it is impossible to get a ticket to San Diego Comic-Con. We had someone this last week, oh yeah, I'm thinking about going. We're like, great, did you get a ticket? No, I think I'll just go down there and see. Nope,
we hear
not
that
happening.
Every year. I'll hear it next week.
That's cute. That's cute. It's not gonna happen. But if you want to go to one of those gigantic shows and it's not impossible to get tickets to New York, if you can afford the plane ride or take the train if you've got the time, New York Comic Con, it's easy to get tickets to. C2E2, easy to get tickets to. Emerald City Comic Con, easy to get tickets to. Don't wait till the last minute. You got to plan it 4 or 5 months in advance, like as soon as the tickets go on sale. But it's not like that sitting waiting room for San Diego where you're 10% likely to get a ticket.
And if you're here in California, one thing I always like to say, because San Diego is impossible to get into, go to WonderCon.
Yeah.
WonderCon is
Same people.
is just about the same show without
panels.
Hall H. It's put on by the same people. The publishers come, the
vendors.
creators come, the
Just
vendors
smaller.
come. It is San Diego Comic-Con, just on a smaller scale, but you can get a ticket, you can get a hotel room, you can show up to the show and have a great time.
And this year, the hot rumor is more and more studios are pulling out of San Diego. So you're not getting, I think, a Sony presence. There's not going to be a Lionsgate presence. There's not going to be a fill in the blank, I can't remember, studio presence. I'm not sure exactly why, if they don't want to promote things or they're finding that it's not worth their marketing dollars or what. So there's a lot less Hollywood stuff this year than previous years.
So if you're frustrated by an inability to get into the show, then try any of these other things that we're talking about. 2 things I recommend to everybody in the world. One, like I say, get out to WonderCon. Get out to New York if you can get out there. Again, get out to your local show.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 of them. Every city in the country has a regional show, has a local show. Get out to a local show and see what's going on there.
Joe's got a question. Which local Bay Area show has the most vintage toys? San Jose Time Tunnel.
San Jose Super Toy Show,
That's it.
no doubt about that.
And what's nice about that show is it happens like 4 times a year.
Yep, it's
Right.
quarterly.
Yeah.
Some
Some of the shows are 1 day, some of the shows are 2 days.
So you can get out there all the time and find, they have vintage everything.
For those of you that are going to San Diego, maybe for the first time, last year we did a panel like this with Arnell, which is San Diego Comic-Con do and don'ts. So we don't want to spend a lot of time rehashing that. So go back to our YouTube channel and check that out. It's from last year, July of 2018.
Yes.
Yeah.
Conventions are super fun. Again, I encourage anybody, the old school fans, the new school fans, everybody's got to try and get into San Diego at least once. If you can't do that, like I say, you got to get out to your local shows. There's lots of things that go on. Again, in the to set aside the going there to spend money phase. Another thing I always encourage folks to do is to get out there and meet the folks, meet the creators, meet the stars, meet the people who create the stuff that we love, because it's fun for you and it's fun for them. And many times over the years, I've had once in a lifetime experiences. The time we hung out with Jim Steranko.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Was a mind-blowing experience I'll never forget. Meeting Jack Kirby many years ago was an experience I'll never forget. And you just, it's another thing that you don't have an opportunity to do in any other kind of venue, in any other kind of genre.
Should we talk about the international shows we've been to?
Yes, let's cross the
Speaking
pond.
of one-time events, those classic moments.
Yes. I have a strange magical ability to find comic books when I travel. I accidentally came upon a
It's his
convention
spidey
in
sense.
London. We were just walking around playing tourist,
Wait, there's a comic book store there.
and I
He's-
stopped
he's right
and
every
rounded
single
the
time.
corner, and there was a
It's
big sign,
ridiculous.
comic convention today, and we went right in and of course spent money and had a good time. And of course, recently we went to Ireland. We were out at Ireland Con. And I'll say, in my experience, the foreign shows are a little bit like what I was explaining, the difference between old school San Diego and new school San Diego. You get over to Ireland and you realize that you don't understand what they're saying because they're Irish, but they're all people just like you. They're people that love their favorite superhero. They're people that love their favorite action adventure show from when they were a kid. They're kids who have that favorite video game, whether they're old people like me or young folks such as yourselves. You get to a foreign country and suddenly you meet people that you feel like you've known your whole life, and that's really fun. That's a big part of the fun of all of this. I talk about that, about new comic Wednesdays in your comic shop. When you're in your shop on Wednesday, make friends with somebody who's reading something you like to read. When you go to these shows, you're in a back issue bin and you pull out a book and the guy next to you says, "Oh, I love that book," and suddenly you're bonding on something, and they could be, from another country, from another planet. Doesn't make any difference.
Geek is a universal language.
Yeah. And it's fun when you travel. If you are fortunate enough to be able to be in other countries for work or for pleasure or for whatever makes you in the internationals, hit those comic shops, find those conventions, find those comic shops, because just like the shows, it's really fun and interesting to see how they're the same and how they're different. They're going to have American comics, but they're going to have comics you've never seen before. They're going to have big displays of things that we don't even sell here. And you're like, wow, they sure do love, what's that bear in Tokyo?
Oh my God, Duffy?
Duffy the bear. Who knew?
What is that?
But they love their Duffy the bear, and maybe you don't even know what Duffy the bear is. I didn't know until I got there. And so again, it's really fun to see how it's similar, how it's different, and learning new things when you're over there.
So for those who did not make it to Ireland Comic Con, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you saw and who you met there?
I met Chris Claremont at Ireland Con, and that was really awesome. You can see the pictures and things on our Facebook page. I got there. It was a very large room. It was smaller than the kind of shows I'm used to attending, because here in California, I'm very spoiled. Here in California, we have lots of conventions that are well attended by lots of vendors and lots of people. Ireland doesn't have the population of California, and so when you go places in Ireland, they don't have as much there because there isn't as much there.
There's
so
not as many people.
It took me a minute to adjust, but once I did, I had a great time because the people that are there are great. The stuff, just like I'm saying, it's a small show. The one we attended to was a small show in our first category, local show. We went to Ireland Con. We were told Dublin Con is the big national huge event that they do. We were at Ireland Con, which, as they say, was more of the local style thing.
Even though it's named after the country.
Even though it's named after the country, not the city.
It's the smaller show.
The one named after the city is the bigger show. They got a Greenland, Iceland thing going on. But anyway, it was really fun. Like I say, the people are great. And like I just said earlier about local shows, you can walk around. They have a huge range of things. There was a gal who made necklaces and with D&D dice and with different things. Cool. And that was really cool. I love the local shows and all these shows for seeing the ways people turn their talents and their passion into a way to make a living. That's always really fun. Met some comic vendors that were really great. I met Chris Claremont, got to spend a few minutes with Chris Claremont.
More than a few.
Well, again, because there's not 250,000 people at the show.
You can walk right
There's not a huge line, and you don't feel bad spending a few minutes with the creator. And so I got to spend a bit of time with Chris Claremont, and that was really great. I've been reading his comics since the Earth cooled, and getting to share that experience with him was a lot of fun.
And what did he have to say?
Oh, he had a lot to say.
Something about the red carpet?
Oh, yeah. He talked about, of course, going to the Captain Marvel movie and being treated like a superstar because he's one of the main creators for all the great Captain original, anyway, Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel comics. So that was a lot of fun. He talked about an upcoming project he's working on with Bill Sienkiewicz, which is really great. And again, that's a wonderful thing to do at shows is, I've been reading Chris Claremont's work since I was a little kid. So being able to tell him how much I loved his work was fun for me. Hearing how much his work meant to me was probably great for him, or maybe it wasn't because he hears it from every single person in line everywhere he goes. But either way, it's a great reciprocal experience.
And those are the memories that you make at conventions. It's not about the vendors, God love them, they're fun, but it's not about that cool toy. It's not about that cool comic. It might be, but for most part, it's those experiences. It's those running into the halls and meeting your heroes. It's grabbing Stan Lee, and getting a bear hug with him just coincidentally as you're walking in the same direction. It's all of those moments. It's me going up the escalator, and to my right, I see Paul Dini, and I'm like, oh my God, fangirl.
Yeah.
It's going to the airport and reading a book by Neil Gaiman and I hear a British accent and I look up and it's Neil Gaiman with his family at the same gate. And I show him the book that I'm reading and he nods graciously and I go back to reading my book. And then a few minutes later, I hear this British accent behind my shoulder saying, "Do you want me to scribble on that for you?" And it's Neil behind me who signed my book. Total fangirl moment. So I don't remember anything about that show other than that moment. So it's about creating those moments that you didn't plan for. That's to me what keeps me going to these things. Because honestly, we've been doing this a long time. It's kind of the same thing. It's a little repetitive. So I seek out those moments because those are things that are going to last a lifetime. And that's what I hope to take to the grave with me.
Sure. No, that's really true. Again, the people that you meet, both famous and regular folks that you meet, are a huge, huge part of this industry, of our hobby, of all this stuff. You know, but I would interject on some level for me personally that
he's going to say comics.
Yes, the comics is kind of part of it. Out in Ireland, for example, I got the whole run of Crisis on Infinite Earths. You don't often find the whole run of Crisis on Infinite Earths all bundled up at a good price for you. But not to make it so much about buying things is about, you know, at the little shows or the big shows, you find that thing you've been looking for all these years, and that's fun. You have that comic on your list that you can't find anywhere,
yeah.
And you find that comic. That's a great moment. One thing we were talking about at VIP night is the awesome. There's two things that go on with the vintage toys. One is you see that toy that you wanted as a kid. When you were a kid, there was that toy, and your dad wasn't going to buy it for you because it was too expensive, or it was too big, or whatever it was. You didn't have that toy.
Or you were going to break it, so you didn't want to get it.
For whatever reason, you didn't get the toy. Maybe the neighbor kid got the toy. Maybe you didn't. Maybe all your friends wanted it. You'd never actually seen one. You get to the convention, and there it is, the G.I. Joe Battleship,
and you're instantly
still
7
in the
years
box.
old. Instantly.
And you're like, oh my God. And then if you're fortunate enough, you know, you have a great job now, you can buy the G.I. Joe Battleship because no one can tell you no. And then that can be a really awesome experience. And another thing is also true. One thing I love about the toy show is finding those things that you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
I came across a Amigo Planet of the Apes thing and that I didn't know existed. I thought, how in the world could there be Amigo Planet of the Apes thing that I have never heard of and didn't know existed? Bought that thing, now it's mine. And like I say, there's, whether you buy it or not, just the fun of seeing that thing, that Evel Knievel cranking thing, whatever it might be. Sometimes, again, just paying the ticket to get into the show is tons of fun because you can meet that person, you can see that thing that you didn't know existed or that you haven't seen since you were 5. And that can also be a great experience to take home. And you know, buying that thing on eBay is not the same experience. And I buy online. Everybody buys online. It's I have nothing against nothing. But there's just something magical about seeing that thing and scoring it.
The smell.
The aircraft carrier, yes.
Yes, that G.I. Joe aircraft carrier.
And again, all these things that we're talking about are things that you just can't do. I am in my comic book store that you see here every single day. I have a wonderful experience of hanging with great people and selling comics and talking comics and all that great stuff. We could do a whole hour panel on how awesome it is to be a comic retailer. But there's things that you do at the shows that I cannot provide for you. There's things that you can do in conventions that you just can't do here in my shop or any other shop. And get bit by the bug, and then research your next biggest show. Get out to that regional show. Get out to that national show. You know, you can go from the San Jose Super Toy Show to Silicon Valley, to Sacramento, to WonderCon, to San Diego, and now you've not even left the state, and you've run the gamut of great conventions.
And whenever we go to shows, we do our best to try to do live videos, pictures, to kind of bring you to the show with us. So always check out our Facebook page because we're going to be posting things there constantly, especially next week.
Yeah, keep up with the Facebook page. Watch all those videos and the posts and the pictures. Check out the video on the last day. I run the video of this giant stash of books that I brought back. Speaking of planning, because people will be watching that video and they'll be here on Wednesday to score those books. That's lots of fun. So real quick, Well, I guess we've already said ours. Best con experience, like what's something besides meeting Neil Gaiman at the airport? What's one that comes to mind?
So let me talk about the Paul Dini thing. It was the Saturday after the Eisner Awards in San Diego. So for those of you that don't know, the Eisners are like our Oscars. So it's an industry award show where the best comics, the best writers, the best artists get nominated and win an Eisner. Now, Paul Dini was up for his book, The Dark Knight. What's the autobiography book? I'm totally blanking on it.
What's that? Yes.
A Dark Knight's Tale or something, right? And so he was up for that, and he didn't win. And I thought he should have totally won. That book was incredible. If you guys have not read it, go out to your local shop and get it right now. So I saw him on the escalator, and I said, big fan. I'm a store owner. I just got to say, we sold, and I wasn't exaggerating, we sold probably over 40 copies of that graphic novel, more than we had in any other graphic novel in that short amount of time in years. And I said, honestly, I think you should have won last night. And he just kind of looked at me and kind of smiled and said thank you and was very gracious. But I could tell that it kind of affected him because I think he felt like he should have won too. So just having that little moment with him is like, dude, like I'm a fan. I appreciated the work that you did. It was powerful. It meant a lot to me. Thank you. And that's just something that you can't plan for. You can't buy a ticket for. Like it just happens simultaneously. Just serendipitously. That's where I'm like.
I have a million of them, but I'll tack on to that because it's also a Paul Dini thing, and again,
we love Paul Dini.
One of those things. Well, I was just digging in a back issue bin because that's why I go to cons. All these things that I've been talking about, I don't do. I don't go to panels. I don't wait in line for autographs.
I drag them.
I just rifle back issue bins because I love comic books. Some rifle in a back issue bin.
And you can only do so much of that.
No, you can't. You can never run out of back issue bins to dive into. So pulling books out of the bin, and, you look at stuff. This is cool. And I pull a book out, and I hear a voice next to me say, "Oh, that's one of my favorites. You should buy that book." As I say to people, as we say, that's something you do at back issue bins. People say, "Oh, I love that one," and then whatever. Well, I look up, and that guy who said that was Paul Dini.
Cool.
And so of course I put that book on my stack because when Paul Dini tells you that he loves that book and you should buy it, you buy it. And that was really fun. And I if you listen to the podcast, if you watch my videos, if you've been watching this for any amount of time, you realize I'm never at a loss for words. But
and I live with them.
In that moment, I had no idea what to say. I turned and it was Paul Dini, and I wanted to say something, and all I could get out was like, "I will buy this one."
Thank you, sir, for that recommendation.
Equally genius. But again, it's just super fun to be just doing your thing, and you turn around and oh my gosh, there's Paul Dini. Really quick, and this is something else. Meeting Mark Waid is a real treat. Meeting all these creators is a real treat, but I have to say one thing I really like about Mark Waid is he's full of questions. Mark Waid wants to know what you liked about what your favorite book is, why you liked that book, all these things. He's doing market research with every person that, he isn't there to bask in his glory, which he totally could because he's Mark Waid. He's one of those guys that could stand there and hear, you wrote Kingdom Come 100,000 times, but he doesn't. He's interested in that next thing he's working on and selling you that next thing he's working on. And that's, I don't know,
like
Bill Willingham is one of those guys. Bill Willingham holds court. And he's just a very unique personality, and he just sort of orates as in Steranko's the same way. Steranko just sort of orates and is an interesting man, and that was a lot of fun. So anyway, those are some of our favorite moments. And next to lastly, and like we said, we covered this in the topic last year, but really quickly, things you need at any convention. Number one, as I always say, is comfortable shoes and bottled water.
Yes.
Especially, sorry?
I was going to say deodorant.
That's before the show. At the show,
it's too late. Bring it. Just bring a little travel size.
There you go. But comfortable shoes and bottled water. You are going to be on your feet all day. all day, and you're going to be walking and walking and walking and walking. And when you get out of the show, you're going to be walking and walking and waiting for your lift and all that good stuff. So don't, unless you're cosplaying, and then God help you if you are, and then those stilettos, but comfortable shoes and bottled water. You will find yourself thirsty, and there will be 500,000 people between you and the next drink of water. So for God's sake, stay alive. Those are the two things I always like to start with.
You can bring, so some of the bigger shows like San Diego, they've got water fountains in every room. So you can bring like an empty bottle of water with you and just refill it whenever you can.
Yes, that's another great tip. Is
extra phone battery. Look at the schedule of panels ahead of time. Map out your plan A, B, and C if you don't get into stuff that you want to do. Do your research ahead of time, because the last thing you want to do is leave a show and like, wait, Neil Gaiman was there? I didn't even know.
Also true. Also true. The plan B and C is really super important. I'm glad you said that. If you don't have a plan B, you can get depressed, disappointed, upset, unhappy, frustrated. Don't be any of those things in the time that you're at a convention. You didn't pay the money. You didn't take the day off so you could be irritated or depressed. There's always tons and tons of stuff, fun stuff to do. You know, when we get to Disneyland and it's super packed, those are the times that you go to the tiki room, and then you're not going to get on Space Mountain. So find some of those other rides that may not be so packed. And like I say, cons are great for that. Have a plan B, have a plan C. You're probably not going to get to meet Todd McFarlane. There's going to be 8,000 people. You're going to get there yesterday, and there's still going to be 8,000 people in that line. So have a plan B. Go and meet Dick Ayers instead, because Dick Ayers is the other Kirby.
Bring food, bring snacks, bring lots of layers, because those places get really cold and really hot within a drop of a dime.
Also true. Bring layers, because it'll be 108 degrees in Sacramento, and then you'll get into the con and it'll be 40 degrees, and you'll be there in your shirt, in your tank top, and your shorts, and you'll freeze to death.
And bring your comics and things that you want to get signed ahead of time. Don't wait to buy stuff at the shows, because let's say Chris Claremont's going to be at a show. If you forget to bring stuff from home, the vendors are going to mark up all of Chris Claremont's stuff, because they know that you're desperate to buy it, and it's going to be. So bring your stuff from home.
Yeah.
Or your local comic book store.
Yes. Bring stuff. Don't buy Watchmen at the show the year Watchmen's coming out, because you're going to overpay or they're not going to have one. That's definitely a thing. Be prepared. You can never be too prepared when you go to shows.
Have fun. If you feel like you're getting frustrated, go out for a drink, go out for a walk. Just separate yourself for a minute. Know your limits.
That's also true. Know your limits and have fun. That's what this stuff's all about.
That's right.
So questions. Yes, Joe, that is the one, the story where he gets mugged.
If you guys haven't read it, you got go get it right now.
It's A Dark Knight, a true Batman story, I think it's called.
Yes.
And it really is one of the best stories of, like everything Paul Dini. It's excellently read.
I cried, I laughed.
So that may wrap it up. To just give you a couple of things. Obviously, again, San Diego Comic-Con is next week. Keep up with our Facebook pages. We make all the posts.
Live stuff.
Pleasanton Comic-Con, Powerhouse Con in Pleasanton is July 21st, and Silicon Valley Comic-Con is August 16th to the 18th.
South City in San Mateo is on September 15th.
There you go. So that's 3 great shows that you can get started with. We hope you've had a good time and learned a few things as we shared our Comic-Con experiences.
Thank you for watching.
And we hope to see you at 4 o'clock for our State of the Industry panel. And,
it's going to be us again.
Or tomorrow for the swap meet. Tomorrow we'll wrap up pre-Comic-Con Comic-Con.
Yes.
With the customer swap meet.
Why do we do pre-Comic-Con Comic-Con?
Why do we do pre-Comic-Con Comic-Con?
What's it about? Why do we do it?
I told them at the top of the show. It just gives them a little flavor of what they do at San Diego. San Diego. So preview night at San Diego Comic-Con is all about getting there first and getting all the stuff before it's gone. So we do preview night so that our subscribers can come in and take advantage of everything before we have a big sale every single day. So that's preview night. At Comic-Con, you can go to panels. So we're having panels. At Comic-Con, you see the latest movies and you see film trailers. So we have movie night, and we did Hall H. At Comic-Con, there's a huge floor of sales vendors where you can find everything under the sun. So we have a swap meet where you can come and then shop from different vendors and then pick up a little of something, everything under the sun. So we... Yes, ma'am.
We don't do cosplay, sorry.
We don't do cosplay. And I'll tell you why. Because we used
It's
to.
not comfortable.
And then one year, I was the only one who showed up in costume, and that was, it was tragic. And so we thought, nobody wants to see me in costume anymore. So we don't do the cosplay costume
No one
contest.
wants to see us in like tight fitting, no.
But we try and create basically a combination of the things we've been talking about. What we do here is we create a local show that has the global show elements, so that you can get a very small flavor of the things that they blow up to 10 to 11 at the bigger shows.
Yeah.
And we have a good time doing it.
We do. As you can see, we're kind of nutty, so.
And we hope you have a good time participating.
Yeah.
So if no one has any more questions, then we'll wrap it up.
He was Ra's al Ghul one year, actually.
I was Ra's al Ghul
Yeah.
for Halloween. Yes, if you go to the Facebook page, you can
So
find
bad.
things that I have
Hellboy.
cosplayed as at our Halloween parties. And
Lex
different
Luthor was
things.
my favorite, I think.
Hellboy was my favorite.
Hellboy was
But
pretty
Ra's
darn
al Ghul
awesome.
was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Lex was a little too easy. That's why, I'm just a bald guy in a suit.
It worked.
But it worked. So thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks for participating in our Black Hat Comics Rock and Milpitas pre-Comic-Con Comic-Con. We'll see you at 4 for the next panel.
Thanks for watching.
You didn't have your hand up. I was going